So this goes back to something my dad taught me, which is like consistency. In middle school one year, like at the beginning of the year, we were doing New Year's resolutions and stuff. And I said, I want to get like really strong. And so he said, like, in order to be strong, you really need to like stay disciplined and committed to something and really see it through. And he didn't think I had it in me to get super strong because I was a skinny, little kid. So he challenged me to do 20 push-ups a day for the entire year. And he like really forced me to do it. I remember I was like sick one day and I was like really weak, but throughout the day he just got me to do those 20 push-ups. And yeah, I made it through the entire year. I didn't miss a single day.
Ryan Liu, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So we just finished our last duel yesterday with Thornsville and Middletown at home. And I know this is your first year wrestling. I was surprised when you walked in the room. I think I just came to practice one day and I see Ryan Liu there. I was like, oh, he started to wrestle his last year here, like 2 weeks in the season. So how's the season been for you so far? How have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, so it's been good. At first, this winter term, I started off fencing, but we don't have equipment at school. So I know like DevJit already told me to come wrestle and like, a lot of seniors there, you as well. And then, okay, this is actually gonna be a really funny story, right? So I was at the gym lifting one time, and then Massimo's over there, and he tells me like he thinks that he could beat me in a wrestling match, and I did not believe him because he's a skinny freshman, and I don't think he lifts that much. Like, no offense to him. So he takes me to the wrestling room, and then we start wrestling, and then he like beats me up in like under 20 seconds and has me pinned. Like I had no idea he was such a crazy wrestler. And that just convinced me to join wrestling because I realized like strength in the weight room isn't everything in life. Like actual athleticism is something else. Yeah. And that's my intro into wrestling.
That's an amazing intro story. I mean, usually people are like, "Oh, I wanted to work hard. I wanted to." And you're just like, this freshman came up and beat me, and I'm like, I can't let this happen. But yeah, I know it's senior year, so it's kind of tough starting so late. Do you think you're gonna continue at some point or ever come back, or it's kind of just been like this is a one-time thing? Or
Well, it's not over yet, but I think I really love wrestling. Like it's really fun, and I really wish I started earlier because I think I could have been a lot better than I am right now. And like I don't think I'll ever be competitive in college at least because like everybody else already has such a head start. There's freshmen who have wrestled since like I don't know, middle school, elementary school. And there's like people who started freshman year and those people are all way ahead of me. So I don't think I can catch up during college. But I think I'll still keep wrestling as a hobby. Like I already talked to Massimo. I said I'll wrestle him in the spring just for fun, like whenever we have time. And yeah, I think I'll continue wrestling as a hobby.
yeah, I've thought about this as well a lot because I enjoy wrestling so much. It makes me feel great, and it seems like it's done the same for you. But there isn't much wrestling beyond high school if you're not doing competitively because college is very difficult. And then there's not much beyond college unless you go in the circuit because there isn't like an NBA for wrestling.
Mm.
But I thought about it a lot and I realized there's no reason why this week has to be the last week I ever wrestle again because there are so many like clubs and there's so many other things related to wrestling like jiu-jitsu, and I was even looking at some of the colleges I applied to and they have like wrestling clubs where people
Mm.
just come in and wrestle for fun.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that we can't be as good as the people that have been wrestling since they were 3 years old, right? And
Mm.
we can't go competitively. But I think there's so many ways I realized more recently that we can keep wrestling, we can keep having fun with it because it's a great sport and it makes me feel great. And there's definitely ways we can access that going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't think I know enough about the wrestling world yet to know like what opportunities there are. Like I've only wrestled for like a couple months maybe. I don't know how long it's been, but it hasn't been that long, so I don't really know anything. And jujitsu, oh yeah, that's crazy. I think Julian does jujitsu, right? Yeah. Yo, it's crazy. Yeah, he beats me up too. It's I think he's like 20 pounds or something lighter than me, but he can like climb all over me like a spider and like stuff like that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that about Julian, bro, because even I at first like, oh, I don't see Julian that much in the room. Like he doesn't come to a lot of the meets, but then like you wrestle him and it's like, where did this come from? And it's not only me, like guys that are pretty good, like varsity guys on our line will come up and be like, I just wrestled Julian. It's like he hit me with this technique that I didn't even know was possible. But yeah, there's levels to it. I think jujitsu is a much more technique oriented and strength oriented sport as well. But yeah, there's so much that goes on to it. So many different sports you can try. There's always so much shit that's fun to try. But anyways, I have in front of me a list of some of your biggest life lessons and stories that you shared with me. And I only started doing this whole I sent you Google form before this, right? I started this whole process only recently, like in the last 3 or 4 podcasts. And it really goes to show like how much more there is to people than you just see at first glance, right? Like I've known you since freshman year. We were in MPS2 honors together and then
Yeah.
we lifted together and then I haven't seen you a lot more recently, but you'll realize that even the people you've been talking to for so long, there's so much more you have in common. There's so many more stories they have to share that it's also starting this podcast. It's been incredible that so many people have so much to share. And I really enjoyed reading the notes you shared today. So we're going to get into some of your best stories today.
Yeah, so where should we start? Sports or life lessons?
I want to start with your 260 bench because it looks like it's one of your biggest achievements, and I know it's something you're proud about. But one thing that stood out to me is not just the fact that you got a 260 pound bench, but you followed a very, people will call strange routine to get that, right? I think a lot of people would see benching 4 times a week as, oh, that's so unbalanced. Oh, that's all he does, and that's why he's so good at it. But it seems that you're very clear that, oh, I just wanted one goal and I wanted to achieve the goal. So you sacrificed everything for that one goal. And it seems like you're proud of the routine that you followed, and that even if it was different from what other people were doing, there's something unique about that routine that led to the success. And 260 bench, no joke, as what when you hit a junior year.
Well, 260s right now, but I hit 225 junior year. Yeah, that's the landmark.
So talk to me about the journey of how you went to achieve that goal.
Okay, so I think we should start in freshman year, which is I came into the gym and I stepped foot into the gym, not being able to bench like a 10 on each side. So that's like, was that 65 pounds? Yeah, I could barely do that. And then, like I saw the people around me like benching so much, and it kind of like sparked something competitive within me, and I didn't want to be like outcompeted by them. So I started going like every day almost since freshman year. Yeah, so the routine I did in sophomore year was I would literally bench like every day, sometimes 4 times a week. So, and each set wasn't like an easy set or anything. After every workout, I was completely like burnt out and sore. Um, but my bench like skyrocketed. It was like 5 pounds up every week. And I think it was just beginner gains and stuff. But like I went past everybody. Like I was lifting with Angad and Ishan. Like me and Ishan would go to the gym every day after soccer practice. It's like 30 minutes left and we just get a set of bench press in. But yeah, and I was lifting with Misha. But like the thing about all of them is they only went like maybe 2 or 3 times max. But I was in the gym like every week more days than not. Sometimes like I don't know, like five, maybe six days a week bench pressing. And I know that's not optimal, but the thing about that is not everybody is as consistent as me because um like they don't think that they have to go every day. If you're in the mindset of you don't have to go to the gym every day, then there's some weeks that you might just like completely skip working out. But even though like maybe optimally you bench 3 times a week, those guys aren't benching 3 times a week, always, every week. I'm benching at least 3 times a week. Like maybe 4 or 5 times a week, I'm getting reduced gains, but it guarantees that I go every week. So that's my routine.
I think this concept applies to like we can use that as an analogy for something bigger in life that Do you want to be good at a little bit at everything but mediocre, or do you want to go all in into this one goal and then be the best at it, right? Because if you maybe compare your squat to someone else, you can compare other lift, and maybe not be as good as your bench, but then everyone else is just mediocre, right? They're all just okay at everything and they're not special in any way. And while okay, it's a gym context, that's one way of looking at it. But even in life, I think the modern world is very much pushing for being balanced, that you should dip your toes in a little bit of everything and you should have a balanced life. But if you focus a lot on one goal, I think your story shows that you can become like just number one in that goal, but it really takes sacrifice. And I think the problem with sacrificing for one goal is that people get bored of it. People get bored of the fact that, okay, I've been working this goal and this goal, this goal, and like I want novelty, I want excitement, I want to have a little bit of everything because life seems so dreary and boring. Do you think that ever hit you with the bench press where it got boring at some point, or like you don't want to go and bench 5 times a week? You think that that period ever hit you, or were there some reason why you're able to just hit it every week, not consistently, more consistent than everyone else that helped you to reach the goal you set out for yourself?
I think that's a really interesting concept or question of like, do you want to be good at everything or good at one thing? And so my answer to that is like, I think you should strive to be good at one thing because like I'm joining wrestling right now. I do soccer, I do crew, I've done wrestling, I've tried fencing, I've tried track, I've tried all these things, but in none of these sports am I like the best one there. And so I'm not known for any of it. And um but the one thing that I am good at is bench press, and that's what everybody knows me for. Like all my friends know me for that, and even people I don't really know, somehow they know that I bench a lot. And um yeah, to answer your question, does it ever get boring to be good at just one thing? I think it's the opposite because it's something that makes you stand out. And um every time I go to the gym, like I know that like this is my event, this is my lift, and everybody who's in the gym knows that this is like my lift, and that encourages me every day to stay disciplined and continue working out. Yeah.
So, as people, we tend to migrate to the crowd, right? We see what other people do and we use that as a reference for what we should do. And there's no one benching 6 times a week. So why did you start benching 6 times a week? What inspired you to do that?
Um, well, I think this goes back. We're talking about life lessons before, so this goes back to something my dad taught me, which is like consistency. In middle school one year, like at the beginning of the year, we were doing New Year's resolutions and stuff. And I said, I want to get like really strong. And so he said, like, in order to be strong, you really need to like stay disciplined and committed to something and really see it through. And he didn't think I had it in me to get super strong because I was a skinny, little kid. So he challenged me to do 20 push-ups a day for the entire year. And he like really forced me to do it. I remember I was like sick one day and I was like really weak, but throughout the day he just got me to do those 20 push-ups. And yeah, I made it through the entire year. I didn't miss a single day. So I think like that was a lot harder than it sounds to do something every day like that. And that really taught me the lesson of consistency because I saw the gains in real time. Every like month or so, maybe I could add like a couple, maybe five more push-ups. And by the end of the year, I went from like less than 20 to like over 60 in a row. And I don't think I could do 60 push-ups in a row anymore because I don't do it every day. And that just goes to show like why consistency is so important. So applying that back to the bench press every day kind of thing, I know that if I do something every day and I stick at it, I'll get results.
I think there's also something so satisfying about consistency. Like the fact you can look back at the year and be like, I did 20 push-ups every single day. Right. And it's easy to say that, like, oh, it's just 20 push-ups, takes 2 seconds. But then there'll be one day where you keep pushing it back. It might be like 11 o'clock at night, like shit, I didn't get my 20 push-ups in, and you might have to get it in. But I think there is something so fulfilling about consistency, whether it be like, I'm gonna take a cold shower every single day, every single morning, or it's like I'm gonna go to bed at this time every single day. And a lot of people will look at that, it's like a dark thing, like a gloomy thing that it's like you're taking away the happiness of life by making your life so rigid. But I would argue that for a lot of people there's a different like sense of happiness you can derive from that consistency. So would you say you felt that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's like stages to it. The the first stage is like excitement, like motivation. It's kind of like you hear people talk about like 3 a.m. motivation. They want to change their life in the middle of the night. So they get up and like do their homework or something, and then they crash and they don't do it again. So that's the first stage. And the second stage, I think, is the hardest stage, which is um like you don't want to do it anymore, but you choose to keep on doing it. And in the third stage, it's you've done it for a while and you've gotten good at this thing, whatever it is that you're doing. So you enjoy it. And I think, I don't know, I'm at like different stages with different things in my life. For bench press, I think I'm on the third stage where even though every day, like I'm not gaining 5 pounds onto my max bench every week anymore. Sometimes I'm going backwards, but I still enjoy it a lot because I've been doing it consistently. But that's not true for everything. Like schoolwork, obviously, it's tough. I have no motivation to do it. And there's like, I don't know, I get impulsive thoughts sometimes that I should start learning something new or trying something new. And that's like the first stage of learning something. Yeah.
You know Alex Mosey?
Yeah.
So Alex Mosey is this big business guy. He has a YouTube channel and he makes a lot of content. And he has a very similar frame that you've described here, except he has it in 5 steps. And he describes this as the 5 steps you need to follow to become successful.
Mm,
And the word he uses that the first stage is the delusional optimism stage.
mm,
It's where like you see this goal that everyone's doing and you're like you want to hop on the train and you think that oh it's gonna be so easy. I just have to do this, have to do that. Like you see everyone making podcasts online. You're like, oh, I want to start doing that, and like that seems so cool. Or I want to learn the guitar. Everyone's doing that. Or I want to start wrestling. Or I want to start benching. And at first, it's the excitement stage. It's delusional optimism. You think it's gonna be easy. Oh, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be. It looks like everyone found out the way to do it. You just have to do it. You start doing it.
yeah.
And then the second step is right. What did he say it was? Informed pessimism. So we went from delusional optimism to informed pessimism, where you said, "Oh wait, I forgot that oh there's this thing here I didn't see before and there's this thing and it's like oh it's not as easy as I thought
Yeah.
oh and then all the problems are crawling in that you thought
Mm,
oh like wrestling is fun I mean most people don't think wrestling is gonna be like a fun easy thing but like let's say like oh like you see all your friends lifting in the gym you think oh it's gonna be like this fun easy thing and then you walk and you realize oh wait like progress is slow and it's hard and there's gonna be days you don't feel like doing it and then all these things you didn't even think about before just come in your mind and you realize how hard it actually is.
yeah.
That's the second stage. That's the stage you described where it gets harder and you don't want to do it anymore. And then third stage, it gets even lower. It's like the valley of despair,
Mm,
where it's like, if it's like a big goal, like getting 1 million subscribers on YouTube, it's a pretty big goal. At first, it seems
yeah.
so easy and fun. And
One
you
day.
start realizing that, oh my God, there's all these things I didn't think about. But you somehow keep sticking with it. It's like you're 5 years down the road and you're in the valley of despair because you've done the boring work, but you haven't seen like any success.
Mm,
Which is like most of the people who we see are like really successful that I've read about and looked at, like the big billionaires, like they all had their valley of despair moment where they spend so much time doing the boring work with no results, no positive reinforcement.
yeah.
But then you go into informed optimism, where it starts to work out. You start to wait. I'm starting to figure things out. It's starting to work out. Your bench numbers might finally start to go up, and you're saying, okay, wait, I actually am capable of achieving this goal, and then you're successful.
Mm,
But I think most people, when they're goal setting, they go to delusional optimism, informed pessimism, and then they hop into a different train.
mm,
Like,
yeah.
oh wait, this is too hard. Let me do this one instead. I think that when people are making money, I see this in them a lot, where they're like, okay, I found this really cool business idea. Let's flip houses, right? And a lot of people are trying to flip houses these days. They think, oh, it's gonna be easy. Like, oh, you just have to buy these houses, sell them. It's easy. And then they figure out it's not as easy as they thought. Like, oh wait, podcasting. That's what everyone's doing now. Let's go do the podcasting thing.
Yeah.
And like they make like 100 episodes and no one's watching. And it's like, oh, it's kind of hard. And then they'll hop on the next train. Oh, let's do some investing. And people just keep hopping on the next train. They try to do as much as possible to see, oh, maybe one will work. I don't think it's like you do as much as possible. I think you choose one thing and you just do it so fucking much
Yeah.
and you make it happen. Like they all can work. I think you just have to choose one thing and just do it as much as
Yeah,
possible
exactly.
to get that success.
I definitely agree with you on that one. It's because, like, just take my bench press, for example. I don't think I had like a good starting point. I was a skinny kid, like my chest was non-existent. And like out of all the people you'd expect in a couple years to be like to have a really high bench press, like I probably wasn't even a candidate. But because I stuck through it, that became something that I was good at. Um, and I just I don't think people stick with their goals enough sometimes. Even myself, I don't think I found something where I could just stick with it besides bench press, to be honest. Like soccer, for example, I was a pretty good soccer player in elementary school and middle school. Um, but when I joined high school, I only played during the fall, and all these other kids were playing in all the other seasons as well and getting their practice in. So I became like in my club team, I was like one of the top players. And now at Peddie, senior year, there's lots of little freshmen that are more skilled than me, faster than me, better at soccer in general. And it just shows you how much like consistency matters in anything.
You mentioned that it's been a challenge to stay consistent with it. What do you think are the reasons why it's so challenging? Because it's not only you, it's everyone. No one can stick with anything for a long period of time. Why do you think it's so difficult to stay consistent?
Well, I think it's because you always trying to find excuses to not do something hard. Like, if you don't get constant like support or motivation, sometimes it's easier just to give up. Like in soccer, I think I wasn't the top player and like I just didn't get the validation that the top players always got, you know? And it's something that I just didn't find joy in playing outside of the regular season. And so I didn't continue with it enough. But when I'm benching in the gym and every week is more progress, that got me through like what'd you call it? Like the valley stage.
The valley of despair.
Yeah, the valley of despair. During the valley of despair, where like, I wasn't like improving in my bench press, um, like my friends, they all still cheered me on because they thought that, I was gonna keep on benching more and more weight every day. And it's that validation that really pushed me through the hard stages of it. But you don't always get that validation. And I think that's a tough lesson that people have to learn. And it's something that I've learned. And I think in the future when I have uh like hobbies or like challenges in life, I'll try to rely less on people's validation for that. But during this learning experience, I think validation is really important. And it's why, like, a lack of validation is why people stop doing the things that they find hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. If there's a younger Ryan Liu walking around freshman year, would you advise if he's asking you for life advice, would you advise him to do the same workout routine you did and just bench like crazy? Or would you suggest him something else, like a more balanced routine? What advice would you get back to your younger self and why?
I think I'd tell him to do some more cardio and like maybe run a bit because it's not my strong suit right now. I'm pretty out of breath every wrestling practice. But I think it's a lesson that you have to learn. Consistency isn't something like if you hear me talking about it right now, that's not going to convince you to be consistent. It's something that you have to learn for yourself. It's something that you have to experience. You should try, I tell them that you should try to do something consistently and do whatever it takes to be consistent, even if it means doing something that maybe hurts your body or is not optimal. But if that teaches you consistency, I think that's a good thing. And it's not something I can give to my younger self in the form of advice. It's like a lived experience.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's move to your back to the story of your father. So You mentioned him briefly before about how he gave you the advice to do the 20 push-ups. Another story you mentioned from him was how he quit cigarettes cold turkey. And I think this word cold turkey is thrown around a lot as this, again, 3 a.m. motivation type thing that everyone's been there, like everyone who drinks has been there at a party, and they're like, I'm the next morning when they're throwing up, like, I'm never gonna drink again. I'm gonna quit this cold turkey. And the next week they've done it again. Because it's so easy when you're in that motivational state to want to say things like, I'm gonna quit cold turkey. I'm never gonna do this again. But it seems like he actually did it. So tell me that story.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I think like he was like really addicted. And on long road trips, I remember like every hour or so, he'd have to like park on the side of the road and like smoke. And he'd always be outside smoking and stuff. I still remember it. But I think he has some health problems with his gallbladder and stuff and other stuff. And he just became really conscious about his health. And he didn't want to influence me while I was growing up. So one day, out of the blue, he just decided to cut off smoking. And like, I remember he was like rolling around in bed because I think it's like physically painful. Obviously, I've never gone through it, but I think it's pretty physically painful. You're always craving it and you don't want to eat. It's like you're sick almost for like almost a month. But afterwards, he got a lot better. And I don't know, it was pretty um like inspiring to see because uh like I've never done drugs or anything. So I just imagine it'd be really hard. Like it's probably more difficult than anything in normal life because I've never had my mind like altered by something like that. And the fact that he could overcome like a drug addiction, which is in your head completely, is like pretty crazy to me. And it really inspired me.
Yeah, I like the piece that you mentioned that it's all in your head. Because there's something about addictions or even life in general that it's all mental, right? And your mind is creating this illusion of a world and tricking you into doing these things and doing these things. And same thing with addiction. Like your mind is like programmed to be addicted to the substance. And there's something like so interesting about that to me that because it's hard for me to understand like how this works. But I don't know, man. I know you're really into nutrition and stuff, right? So what else have you like learned about addictions in general or this topic?
Yeah, so obviously it's not completely in your head. Like, I'm taking anatomy right now. Yeah, I'm taking anatomy right now. And we're kind of learning about addiction in the brain and stuff. And it's all sorts of uh, like, like dopamine, motivation. Uh, so there's like this neurotransmitter in your head called dopamine, and it's what gives you motivation. Every time you do something that releases dopamine, you want to do that thing again and again. So some drugs like smoking or even more like severe drugs, they can like raise your dopamine levels really high, and then your body will produce more like things in your brain to get rid of that dopamine. And afterwards, those things that get rid of dopamine are still there. So little like, I don't know, like talking with your friends or like normal life experiences, they release dopamine, but then your body gets rid of it because you've experienced such a high. So it's not completely in your head in that like, you can cure it just by thinking positive thoughts or something. But there is like a mental component. Um, like I don't think you can blame anybody for being addicted to something because it is like a physical, like chemical problem in your brain. But also, I don't think you should rule out the fact that using your own willpower, you can do things that like you don't think you could do.
What are some strategies he employed that really helped him get through that? Like, how do you think he was able to develop the willpower or the ability to not relapse and not lean back into the addiction?
Well, um, I think primarily he was motivated by like his family, the fact that he had two sons who were growing up, and You know, he started smoking when he was about like my age. And so he doesn't want that for me. He doesn't want me to, like, he can't set a good example if he's still smoking. He can't tell me to not do drugs if he's still smoking, right? So I think that really pushed him through it. And it's it's discipline. It's he was honestly like known for being a smoker. Like people would come to like reunions, like friend reunions, and like the gifts they would bring him would be like some really fancy cigarettes or something. Or like a new lighter, like a shiny new lighter or something. And then he'd say like, "Oh, I don't smoke anymore," or like, "Thank you though." And I think that takes a lot of willpower. It's like it's the people you surround yourself with. When you have a goal like that, when you want to stop something, an addiction, or you want to like continue doing something, you should let everybody around you know that you're doing this thing because everybody will remind you of it. And if you pick up another cigarette, like my mom would probably say like what are you doing? I'd say like what are you doing? Yeah, so I think um what he did was surround himself with people who would remind him to like you can't smoke.
That's a really interesting idea. Actually, I've not heard this one before, but it makes so much sense because just knowing how human nature works, how much we care about the people around us, right? Like it's wired in our being. Because if you were a hunter-gatherer back in the day and the tribe for some reason didn't like you or didn't trust you or knew you weren't a man of your word, they leave you behind. And human strength didn't come because we're like some strong being. Like if you go fight a bear, you probably lose. But we're strong because we can collaborate. And there's not many like there are a lot of social species, but I don't think there's a social species as social as humans. Like it's all the way up here. But because of that, all the dopamine circuits in our body and everything that's intertwined in our being is so related to the people around us that if the people around us don't like us, it's like the worst feeling in the world. Like everyone's been there in that moment where like, oh, I don't have any friends, or the lonely moments are usually the moments where you feel like you don't have people, and those are usually the worst moments of life because we crave people around us because our monkey brain still thinks that if we don't have people around us, we're gonna die because we need the tribe to survive.
Mm.
So the strategy of telling everyone around you you're trying to achieve this goal, that will really motivate you because if everyone knows you as a guy that can't follow through with this goal, that'll activate the same feeling that is stopping us from like being lonely and not having friends, right? It's the same thing that can help us to find the motivation and the strength to push through that. So that's really interesting, man. Like you tell everyone around you you're trying to achieve this goal, and they'll all just keep you accountable.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing in anatomy that I've like learned recently is that that's especially true for young people, teenagers who are developing. Like at our age, our brains haven't fully matured and we're even more susceptible to like peer pressure. And you hear peer pressure as sort of like a bad thing, but you could use it to your advantage if you understand that your brain is more susceptible to peer pressure, then like use the strategy I just outlined right there. Just like tell everybody about your goals. And that's kind of like what I did. Like I'm motivated because everybody knows that I bench press. If I stop bench pressing, then like what would they think of me? I'm like motivated by that peer pressure, but in a good way. Yeah.
You watch a lot of do you watch any podcasts at all? I know you're talking about Lex Friedman before, but do you watch podcasts in general?
Yeah, I like it's kind of hard for me to fall asleep sometimes, so like I just listen to a podcast before bed to get me in like the sleepy kind of mood. But yeah, I listen to Lex Friedman, and I listen to Andrew Huberman. Is he does like health kind of stuff. Lex Friedman is more like I don't know, like philosophy, politics kind of. Yeah.
The reason I mentioned this is because I would say that a lot of my growth in who I am as a person came in the last year. I think 2023 was a year where I grew a lot as a person. And when I say that, I mean my character, my values, and my health in general. Those are the big three. And if I think back to like how was I able to grow so much in like the areas, whether it be like my mental state or my discipline or whatever that might be. If I look back, I think the reason why I was able to grow so much is because I spent a lot of time watching podcasts. But what does that actually do to you? It's kind of like you hear that quote that you are the combination of the five people you surround yourself with, right? I might have butchered that a little bit, but if you surround yourself with like five people that like to party a lot, that'll probably be the person you end up kind of becoming. But because I spent a lot of time watching podcasts from people like Andrew Huberman, from people like Chris Williamson, it's kind of like they became like the people in my life that I spent time with, even if I was just watching an hour or two of their content a week. Like they were slowly brainwashing me and inserting these mindsets into me that they might not have originally be my own, but now they feel like my own because I've consumed so much of this content that has transformed me into who I go on to become. So this goes back to what we were talking about with the cigarette thing, right? Where you're talking about tell everyone around you your goals. But also when you say that the people around you play a huge role in who you become, it's also just the people you surround yourself with, right? If you watch an hour of a podcast a week and you don't even take an action step, just the fact that you're listening to the podcast is slowly like changing the wiring of your brain where you'll just remember something 2 years from now and do a thing just because of something you learned in a podcast 2 years ago. And that's happened so many times for me. But yeah, man, I think for anyone who's trying to grow, I think the single reason or the single thing that allowed me to grow in the last year was literally just the content I consume, just consuming more content. And obviously, you don't want to be like sitting in your room watching 8 hours of podcast a day. Like
Mm.
it's kind of sad.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I think integrating that into your life, where you're driving to work, you listen to music, go on a podcast tomorrow instead, or like you're on a flight, or finding ways to integrate that. I think that is a single thing that's changed. Do you agree with that? Do you think that I know you watch Andrew Huberman, right? That's a great health guy, and I know Lex Friedman as well. Do you think they've helped you to improve your life?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think Andrew Huberman, especially because he has so many tips that you can implement into, like for me, I think sleep is a big thing. I have trouble falling asleep sometimes, and his advice, it works pretty well. But the thing that I find like problematic about podcasts and stuff is that it's no different than like other content you consume in a way. Even though it's helpful, it's kind of a source of like instantaneous like motivation. Going back to what we were talking about before. Uh like listening to a podcast doesn't mean you're improving yourself. Like you're learning new things that you can use to improve yourself, but you're not actively improving yourself. And so I think people can't just watch podcasts to improve. Like you said, they need to actually take a step by themselves and learn these things like for themselves. But definitely, I think podcasts are helpful in teaching you certain things. Like Andrew Huberman doesn't try to motivate you or anything. He just he outlines like, oh, this thing is good for your health. You can start doing it, and then I do it, and that's the important thing. I actually do it, and if you're just sitting there and listening and you don't do anything, it's not really worth your time.
But that's the question though. How do you actually do it? Like someone's probably sitting there watching this right now. How does he actually use like one thing that we learned today and actually implement it? How do you think so?
That's a good question. I think whenever you try to do something new, don't be like swayed by your impulse, the motivation, like the impulsive motivation. Don't be swayed by that. It doesn't always work out. Like if you're listening to this at night, right before you go to sleep, and you think, oh wow, that's some like crazy good advice. Like I should do it right now. Like that's your impulsiveness speaking. You should wait for like the right time where once you start it, you can continue doing it. Like um if I just wrestled Massimo that one time and like kept on just wrestling him, going back to him and like I don't know, like wrestling wherever we could, like I don't think I'd make that much progress. But instead I found a time I went to watch one of the wrestling meets, and after the meet I asked the coach if I could join the program. And then I got in, and that kind of forces me to like stick with wrestling. So um yeah, like whenever you start something, don't rely on your impulse. Rely on your own will. Or if you can't rely on your own will, rely on somebody else guiding you and like forcing you to do it.
Yeah, someone watches this podcast and tomorrow they start their 6 day a week bench routine. But yeah, I think Derek Sivers, he's this author. He has this one line that I just remembered, which is never believe something the first day you hear it. And I think it's so applicable because, I think the world is a noisy place. And I don't like to put podcasts in that category because I'm a big fan of them, but news, TikTok, like there's so much information these days, and there's so much things that people think they need to know. There's this fear that if you don't follow it, like if you don't know what's happening, you'll be outcasted and you'll be away and you won't know anything. And as someone who's pretty much cut all of it out, besides some podcasts I listen to, I can say that's all is in your mind. Like everything else, it's all mental. But the idea of not believing something the first day you hear it is because you'll hear something and it'll immediately change all your beliefs. And some like people are really fancy with their words these days. And Robert Greene, who's like the guy who wrote the 48 Laws of Power, like one of the things he keeps coming back to is that don't fall for people's words, fall for their actions, right? Like don't be a guy that's so noisy and talks a lot. Be a guy that shows by their actions, right? Don't be the guy that says I'm so good at benching. Be the guy that actually goes and benches 260, right? And because I think everyone on the internet has mastered the skill of convincing people and persuading people and putting these fancy thumbnails and these titles and have this magical way with their words that they're convincing people. And you see these delusional people who be walking around that are just like thinking the world is just a deranged and dark place because of all the stuff they saw in the news. And if we look at the actual metrics, the world has never been more peaceful ever in history.
Mm.
If the world is deranged, if anyone here listening thinks the world is deranged, it's probably because of something you saw on the internet and not something you saw with your eyes. Like if the internet didn't exist, you think the world is quite a beautiful place. Let's be real.
Mm.
Um, like back in the day, it was bad. Like it was real bad. Like the amount of people that die from like fame plant. I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent, but the idea is that I like that a lot. But you shouldn't rely on your impulse.
Mm.
We should be careful because the world is a bit of a noisy place, and we want to be careful by who's putting the beliefs in your mind. You know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's surprising to hear that like right now is one of the most peaceful times of all time because we hear about war all the time. We hear about, all sorts of problems in the world. I think it's partly because of where we are. Like we're in a pretty safe area, obviously, so we don't see much of like the problems in the world, but it's also because of like social media, like you said, about how like humans gravitate towards bad things. We like to watch bad things. That's what like gets us going. And that's what draws our attention. Like we don't want to hear like happy news. It doesn't interest us. And so social media all the time always gives you the worst things they could find so that that's it draws your clicks, it draws your views, it draws your attention. But in reality, it isn't as bad as it seems.
Another topic I want to talk to you with about is the year where you quit all sweets. And that to me is really impressive because you look around at the type of shit people are eating, bro, and it's kind of sad, right? And as someone who has gone a year without eating sweets, it's probably as applicable to you as anyone else, right? But I think I do agree that one of the biggest problems today is unhealthy food, right? I heard the stat that someone today is more likely to die binging at McDonald's than from a famine, right? The number of deaths from obesity has crossed the number of deaths from famine. And to anyone that doesn't know, like famine has been a significant problem for pretty much all of our history. Like we're blessed to have so much food, but our bodies weren't designed to live in abundance. They're designed to live in scarcity, which is why quitting sugar is the hardest thing in the world. But seems you're able to do it. So talk to me through some of the motivations that of why you decided to go a year without eating sugar and some of the challenges you faced along the way.
Well, I want to start off by saying that although eating or not eating sugar for a year is pretty impressive, I think it's like even more impressive to like not eat meat as you do. And let's not downplay like how interested you are in nutrition as well. Like we started the nutrition club together. But yeah, so back to the sweets thing. In my sophomore year, I decided to cut out anything sweet from my diet. That meant like no cookies, no fruit juice. Uh like honestly, I didn't even eat like really like bready, like carbohydrate kind of foods either. And it's a lot harder than you think because if you go down the list of things you eat in a day, like in the breakfast, typically before then I would have like some cereal, no more. Like maybe a muffin with it. I didn't get that anymore. And during lunch, I always got like a glass of apple juice. So I replaced that with water for that year. And During dinner when they have dessert, they bring out like a cake or ice cream, whatever. I couldn't have that either. And you know, the reason I started doing that was like two reasons. First of all, I know that processed sugary foods are not good for you. And um although I wasn't like fat or obese at the time, I knew that like cutting it out could have like good benefits for your body. And so the second reason is that like I was really inspired by my dad, the way that he quit smoking like that. I wanted to see if I could do something similar to challenge myself. So that year, I dedicated myself to not eating sugar. I was curious if I had the same willpower as him. Um, so at first it was like pretty hard, obviously. I was starting to realize like so many foods have sugar, like so much more than you would think. Almost everything has sugar, honestly. Um, but after a while, it got a lot easier. And I think that's both the consistency thing and also something like physiological in your body, where if you don't get sugar, your body doesn't crave sugar anymore. Like I read this study a long time ago. I don't like recall it off the top of my head anymore, but like sugar can be an addiction. The more you eat sugar, the more you want more sugar. Just like the more you smoke, the more you want to smoke. And so after quitting sugar for like around a month or 2 months, like I didn't even want sugar anymore. It kind of disgusted me. When I saw like ice cream, I loved ice cream before. I loved apple juice before. And I love apple juice right now. I eat sugar now. But like I really love apple juice. It's been like my favorite drink ever. But during that year, after the first couple of months, it disgusted me. Like when I saw apple juice, when I saw other people drinking apple juice, and when I saw other people eating ice cream and cookies and stuff, I didn't want to have it. Like it kind of disgusted me. It's like seeing a food that you don't normally want to eat.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that exact concept. So I went the entire summer without eating sugar. So I pretty much cut out all processed food. I was just eating my mom's home cooked food, and it was like probably the best I've ever felt. But I was going to ask you because what happened to me within a few weeks is that I started to feel an insane disgust toward everything processed. Like I'd walk in the supermarket and I'd look at like the Pop Tarts and I'm like, why do people eat this? Like, and I still feel that way about like certain sweets and shit. It's like I used to love eating sweets and I grew up eating a lot of sweets, but there's this interesting mental revelation you go through. It's like you're pulled out of the box, like you're living in this box and you think this is all you see, and you're pulled out of the box and you look at the sugar for what it is, and then you start to think about the fact that this was made in like a factory and it's not real and it's like
Yeah.
disgusting. And you see people munching on their bars for breakfast. Like that's how you guys start your day with the fucking like Gatorade protein bar, which has 26 grams of fucking sugar. Like it's crazy. And I went a while without eating sugar. I eat now. I wouldn't say I eat anything processed at all, but for breakfast at Petty, I do occasionally throw in like if they have pancakes, I might eat like a pancake or two, or if they have French toast, I might. So I'm not saying I'm as disciplined as I was before, but I besides that, I've been pretty good about it. But then I will notice something. During wrestling season, my craving for sugar came back,
Mm.
which is very
Me
interesting
too.
because it only happens on wrestling meets. And I thought about that for a while. Why? At first, I ate like one day I just leaned into my desire and I ate the Gatorade bar and I felt so bad for it because I knew like this is so bad for me. But every time there's before a wrestling match, I craved it. I'm like, why? Like, but then I started to realize that it makes sense when you're about to go do something very difficult, when you're stressed, like you're kind of in that primal state, like you're about to go fight,
Mm.
your body craves sugar because you need sugar is like in general a good thing for you, right?
Yeah.
And in the environment, it's pretty rare to get sugar,
Yeah.
which is why you crave it because it's scarce. And whenever if there's a large amount of sugar, your body would crave it so they can like store it, right? It
Mm.
wasn't meant to be living in a world where it's like there's so much sugar around you. But yeah, I realized that before wrestling meets, I had the desire, and I often indulge, and I'll have a Gatorade bar or something. Which is really, have you felt the same way?
So that's actually really interesting because I do feel the same way. And recently I learned why we feel that way in anatomy, which is that during periods of stress, like your body releases stress hormones that actually make you want to eat sugar. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because if you're trying to escape somebody or um like flee or something, afterwards you're gonna be like really hungry because you just burnt so much of your energy. And oh, something else I want to touch on, back to like being disgusted about sugar. there's this funny story that my girlfriend told me, which is that she always ate like Korean food, which isn't super strong in like sugar or spices or actually there's a lot of spices, but like not really strong in sugar, right? So the first time she ever ate a Rice Krispie treat, like she threw up, which is like insane to me because being raised in America as a kid, I'm exposed to sweets everywhere. There's like I love Rice Krispies and stuff like that. So it's just insane. But I feel the same way about like super sugary foods, like some donuts and stuff. Like those things are really sweet. And when I take a bite, I just don't want to take another bite. And that's probably how you feel. And actually that is how you feel because I've also gone on a sugar-free diet. So I know that's how you feel when there's something really sugary and you haven't had sugar in a long time, that's how your body feels about the sugar. Yeah.
Your story is very affirming because that means I was right. So that makes me feel kind of smart. But yeah, bro. I will say that in terms of discipline, there was one concept I want to talk to you about, whether is there too much discipline? And the reason I want to talk about this idea is because I think we've both been quite disciplined in our lives, whether it be for benching or health wise. And we watched Andrew Huberman, which is a very disciplined kid. Anyways, the the thing with discipline is that it was a very freeing thing at first, where it's like I didn't like my life a lot, but I started doing these daily habits and like I'm disciplined and I'm waking up at the same time every day, or I'm like meditating every day, whatever that might be. And you feel really good at first because you feel that I'm able to be consistent with something is the first thing you feel. You have this belief in your mind that it's helping you, like, oh, my mental health is being improved by meditation. Like, I'm feeling better throughout my day because I'm taking cold showers. Like, I remember the first time I took a cold shower, I was watching Jocko Willink featured on Andrew Huberman, and they were just they're kicking back, talking about cold showers. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a cool thing. So, like, the same day, I go and hop in the cold shower, and I felt so alive, blasting music. I'm like, oh, this feels good. And I started doing it every day. But if I remember back to when I first started doing discipline, it was like the best thing in my life. And if you sat down with me having a conversation about discipline, like I would talk for hours like last year. But I think recently it's kind of taken a different turn where I feel like I'm a slave to the discipline. And it's almost like the discipline has become superstition, where it's like, oh, you have to take a cold shower in the morning or else I'll have a bad day. And if I don't take a cold shower in the morning, my whole day is ruined. And I feel like shit all day. And I start feeling tired throughout the day. Or you didn't meditate today, all of a sudden I have anxiety throughout the day. Or you didn't do your daily habit, you woke up an hour late today, your whole day's ruined. I realized that the discipline became superstition. And I was following, and the discipline was a master and I was a slave.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure this dilemma out because it seemed like my whole life was this. And my whole sense of happiness was like inserted into discipline, where it's like I have to do these things every day because that makes me feel good about myself. And it's almost like a life without those habits is scary. Because like what is on the other side of that? So I think the last few weeks I've been trying to chill more.
Mhm.
I'm a big overthinker, as you could probably see by like these what I'm telling you right now. But
Yeah.
I decided that I've kind of made it so that I made something I love, like a cold shower, into something I hate, that I have to
Mhm.
do it every morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
So I started to be like, you know what, it's not that serious. Life is mental. And I started to ease up on it a little bit. I started to be like lighter on myself and relax with myself, and it actually got better. And I feel like I can go back and do those things again without hating them because I feel like I do it for me instead of I have to follow this rule at 7 o'clock every morning. I have to do this on a script. Like it's not that serious. But yeah, man, that's my little story with discipline.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. And for me, that thing, that structure, that discipline was sleep. So, um, like I thought that sleep was like super important for me. I'd go to bed, in freshman year, I'd go to bed at like 8, like before study hall even started. And we'd have to like turn in our phones and stuff. And I wouldn't turn in my phone because I'd be already in bed and they'd come looking for me like, yo, Ryan, why don't you turn in your phone? I'm already like fast asleep in my bed. Because that's my parents have always told me that like sleep is so important for you. And I'm listening to these podcasters telling me like, oh, like sleep can like boost your like muscle recovery or I don't know, intelligence, whatever. So I just had this like uh I built sleep up to be like this important thing that if I didn't get enough of it, like my whole day would be ruined, like you said. And the problem with that is I started getting anxiety about not getting enough sleep every day. And so the cure for that is just one day I had this project, I had to stay up past like 12 or like 1, which I haven't done in a really long time. Now I do it almost every day. But like after that project, I realized like um, okay. Well, actually, I'll start with if I did go to sleep past like 11 before then, the next day I would like think that I was so tired and everything hurt and like I had a headache and stuff like that. But that was just all in my head. Like after that project, where I stayed up past 1 and then I got up the next morning and I was like, yo, I should feel like really bad right now, right? Because I slept like 3 or like 4 hours later than my usual time. And then I realized, like, honestly, it's not that bad. Like, I'm still awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's how I overcame that, like, anxiety. So it's experience. Like, once again, it's not somebody telling you something. You have to live through it yourself. So, like, I'm glad I had a chance to be disciplined about, like sugar, for example. Like, now I eat sugar. I'm not so strict on myself anymore. But living through that experience was valuable. But like, realizing that it's not everything is also just as valuable.
Yeah, man, I love that story. I think for me, it was more with schoolwork. I created the optimal schoolwork routine. I don't even know if I've told you this before, but um, yeah, I read a lot about productivity and efficiency and how to make my work efficient. And I my sleep schedule for the last 6 months, I think from August, September, October, November, December until January when I stopped it. Yeah, for 6 months I had the routine where I was had a similar schedule like you. I was sleeping at 9 every day and I was waking up at 5:45 every day, Monday to Sunday, every day. And just like you said that the doing it for a period of time is useful, right? For the discipline piece of it. I did it because for a couple of reasons why. First of all, I wanted to work in the morning because the first reason why, okay, in the morning your mind is more fresh and more efficient after you got your 8 hours of sleep. Second, you have not eaten anything yet, right? So you don't have brain fog, you don't have all that bullshit. So your mind is fresh, you're clean. It's a perfect 1 hour block in the morning. I'm gonna take a cold shower before, so my mind is sharp. I'm gonna meditate, so my mind is like totally clear. I'm gonna sit down. I'm just gonna at my stand-up desk and just work for an hour straight, and boom, I'm just bam out an hour of work, and it worked because I became like hyper efficient. I think one of the first videos I uploaded on my channel was how to finish 5 hours of work in 1 hour. Like it was a thing I was so proud of, right? That I was like, I'm literally working an hour a day. That's it. When before my junior year, I'd work so much. Now it's like I'm a bullet. Oh, I can work so fast and so efficiently. And it was good. It felt good for a while. And I don't regret it because it was definitely a good experience to live through. Wow. But the same way we talk about how sleep is like, oh, you gotta get 8 hours or you have to sleep at 8. The same way is like I have to work with everything optimized. And if I even try to work during the day, I'm like, it's not working. It's just not working. I had a little bit extra homework today, so I sit down after lunch and I'm like, I write down a word in my notebook. I'm like, I'm falling asleep, my brain's hurting. And I don't think I can probably count on my fingers the number of times I worked during the school day for the last 6 months. Probably 2 or 3 times. There was not a single time where I worked after breakfast, a single time. Because I was ruled by the superstition. I'm like, oh, I just ate lunch. I can't work right now. Oh, I'm so tired after practice. I can't work right now. Oh, I didn't do my cold shower right before. I can't work right now. I make all these reasons why I can't work right now. And I made myself weak. I made myself a slave to the routine. The routine that was supposed to free me made me a slave. And I thought to myself a few weeks ago, like a few days ago, that I used to like this routine, but I'm kind of getting sick of it. I kind of want to sleep in a little bit more. I want to make a routine that's more flexible for me, and I feel better when I wake up later as well. So I wanted this a month ago. A month ago, I'm like, okay, let's make this big change. It took me a month to make the change because I was so scared. I was scared because one, I was scared what people would think about me, even though no one really knew it. I kind of had this feeling. I've told like 2 or 3 people about my routine, right? So I had this feeling in my mind that people would think I was weak because it's not as cool to wake up at 7 o'clock, right? It's not as cool. That was the reason I didn't do it. I didn't change it because it wasn't as cool. But was it good for me? Probably not. And we can get that to. I want to get into that piece of it. We can get to that later about doing things for yourself versus what sounds cool. Yeah. But I want to get back to the superstition piece because with you is sleep. For me, is like I couldn't work during the day. I started working during the day, and I forced myself. I forced myself that okay, you ate, you can still work. After brunch today, I sat down and I worked, and I realized like, oh, it's not that bad. I've been doing this all my life, and I made myself a slave. And it's like I feel so much better now because like I can get up at 7 o'clock and have a good day. And even if I miss one habit here and I can have a good day despite working in the evening, like it's so freeing, bro.
I think that's really interesting. And I think there's almost like a curve to it. So there's people at one end of the curve who, um, like for you, it's only working in like the most optimal times, right? So there's some people who like don't care at all and they just work whenever they can at late at night or like right after a meal or whatever, right? And then there's people like you before who are like at the top of the curve and they only work during these optimal times, which sometimes like isn't the best. And then there's people like you now who've like you've like reverted back to like oh I can work anytime kind of mindset. But I think you're at like your most enlightened position because you've been through it all. And I think that's a really valuable experience, which is um like you know you've tried everything and now you know what's best for you. So you can try to work during the most optimal times, but if you can't, that's okay and you can still do your work.
Yeah, man. And with you as well, you can sleep on time and feel good about it, but you can also sleep in one night because you have a project to work on and just feel totally fine because you learn that you become more aware of your mind, right? And I think people lack a self-awareness these days about like how their mind works. But when you kind of use the make and break strategy that you're gonna just try all these cool things and see what works and shit will explode and we'll try new things, then you really have this new perspective on life where it's like you can see the world, you can sleep differently than everyone else on campus, right? Because you've tried everything. You slept at 8 for like most of your life, or most of your recent life. And yeah, man, it's just that perspective, bro. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I just thought of something else to add on to like the superstition thing. Another superstition I had was so during like junior or maybe sophomore year, I was taking creatine like pretty like consistently. And it was around the time like my bench press kind of hit like a plateau. I think it was like maybe start of junior year ish or end of sophomore year. I plateaued at like 185 around there, 190. And no matter how much more I benched, I just couldn't add that 5 more pounds. I was trying all sorts of things, but when I started taking creatine, like, oh, like I had like a little boost again. Like I got another 5 pounds in a couple weeks. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like this supplement is like so useful. Like it's a muscle building wonder or something. And then I ran out of my tub one day. And then like I didn't know what to do. And then that's another thing I overcame, which is I realized I went back in the gym the next day. I didn't take creatine the day before and I was fine. Like I still benched the same amount. And yeah, just something else I thought of.
I want to return to the piece that I went so long without changing my routine because I was scared. Actually, there was two things I was scared of. The first thing is that I thought the world would think I was so weak that nobody cared, nobody gives a fuck. That's what I learned. Number two is that I thought that well, not I guess the second one is a more reasonable concern that I was like, oh, how am I gonna work now? If I like, I think I wanted to change the routine because I was sick of getting up so early every day. But I was like, I have to do this routine because there's no other time I can work. It's impossible for me to work any other time of the day. And I guess I got over that second fear, but I think that first fear is what holds a lot of people back because, I mean, we talked about why, right, with the human nature stuff about how we're so wired to other people.
Mhm.
I think you really need to look back at the things you're doing in your life and really question why do I do these things?
Yeah.
Am I doing this for me? Am I doing what's really best for me? Am I doing what the authentic side of me really wants?
Mhm.
Or am I doing something because other people think it's cool? Am I getting up and working up early because it's good for my health? Or is it because when I'm talking to someone and they end up hearing that I wake up early, I feel good about myself and I feel cool and it's like, oh, this is a disciplined guy. But I realized it was more of that second reason.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you have a similar story where maybe you've realized that you're doing things for other people. It might not even be related to discipline, but it might be. I think a lot of people tend to do things for other people without even realizing it. I know I've been a big people pleaser a lot of parts of my life, but what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason I started going to the gym in high school, working out, was so that I wasn't that like I wasn't perceived to be like the skinny, like weak little kid anymore. And I don't think that was something that I wanted for myself. I think that was like pushed on to me by like society, by social media, by the people around me. I see like, people who are better looking, more athletic, stronger. These are the guys with all the with like so many friends and like high social status. And like so that's what motivated me to start like working out and stuff. And I think sometimes like I already said this, but peer pressure can be a good motivator. You could use it to your advantage if you understand yourself and you understand like the things that you want. You can use it to your advantage. So I think everything that I've talked about so far is kind of, in a way, an example of uh, this idea of are you doing something for yourself or for other people? Like the sugar thing, it's something that like my parents were like super proud of me. Like they were like, oh wow, like I could never do that. And that kind of like that motivated me. So it wasn't completely out of my own like my own will. Bench press, obviously, I already talked about this, but it's the people around me. They're like, oh wow, he could bench a lot. So I keep benching. Like wrestling, because I don't want to be like outdone by a freshman. And everything else too. I think almost everything in life, like the social aspect, is part of it.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything you do in life that you feel like, oh no, I do that for me and not for a social aspect, I feel like if you keep digging, you'll eventually realize, oh, it's for a social aspect. Like
Yeah.
we're all human, we're all animals at the end of the day. But it's not always a bad thing, right? I know in my example, it's like I sacrifice my health for other people, but sometimes it's a good thing, right? You talk about positive peer pressure, where sure, you might have started going to the gym for other people, but it ended up being something that positively improved your life, right? Improved your health, improved your well-being. So it's not always a bad thing, but I think it becomes a bad thing when we sacrifice what we know is right for ourselves for other people. But anyways, let's move on. One thing you wrote was that one of the biggest problems in the world today is phone addiction. Talk to me about that.
Okay, so this is like something personally that I've struggled with, and I've never gone like a year without using my phone. I've gone a year without sugar, but never a year without my phone because it's so essential to our lives. I think it's phone addiction is a real addiction. And I find myself like on my phone when I shouldn't be on my phone. So just for example, during like college writing season and during my senior thesis, I had to like delete Instagram. I had to delete Snapchat and social media because I knew that I would be spending way too much time on that. But then during that period of time, I'd find myself like thinking, oh, are my friends like having conversations that I can no longer participate in? Is there like news going on that I'm missing out on? And it's like social media and like your phone, it's such a dangerous addiction and almost an inescapable addiction because I've just like today I just re-downloaded Instagram because I'm done with my thesis and I want to be caught up with all my friends and news and everything like that. It's so dangerous because if you disconnect, there's a feeling of like people will have an advantage over you. People who use their phones will have like better social connections and stuff like that. And you fear like missing out. And I think that's why it's so hard to quit. And it's almost impossible to quit, I feel like. I know I think you mentioned that you don't really go on social media that much. So yeah, like what do you think about that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like the way they're designed is to make it feel like your whole world is on the screen, which is why like most people can't quit, right? It's like it's so easy to be addicted. It's like it's made to addict you, right? Um, I'd say that you're probably better than most people because you have the ability to delete it for a period of time, which most people can't even do that, right? But yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you about this because given that you've been away from it for like periods of time, like periodically, you'll really see the contrast, right? Like you'll have a life with it without it, and you can really see like what is life like without it. Me personally, this is probably one of the things I'm biggest on in terms of discipline is like just not using my phone as much, right? Social media. So I deleted social media right before my junior year started. and I re-downloaded it the next day. I'm playing, yeah. So I did re-download it, then I kept trying to delete it and kept trying to go back, and it was like this little spiral.
Yeah.
But then I ended up going through with it, and I haven't had it since.
Wow.
Yeah. So no TikTok, no Instagram, no Snapchat, and I think for a while, I think at first it's lonely
Mhm.
because I think the reason I found it lonely at first was because notifications give you a sense of security.
Yeah.
It's so weird that you open your phone, you have no notifications. It's like you feel anxious. And I'm trying to understand why that is, but I really think it's because like your your proof that you're doing well socially is your notifications. And if you don't have that, it's like it's kind of sad and you feel depressed. But it goes away pretty fast. I'd say within a month or two, it goes away.
Mhm.
But yeah, it goes away within a month or two, but then you mentioned that you feel like people have power over you
Mhm.
because they have access to something you don't.
Yeah.
You feel weaker than other people because they're on social media and you're not, and you don't know what's happening in the background.
Mm.
I would say that feeling I felt for a week or two, but then once you fall through, once you go 2, 3 months without it, then you'll notice that everyone around you is kind of delusional.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's really like kind of like with sleep, how it's you can't really describe it to someone who hasn't done it.
Mm.
It's like you really have to be there and feel it to see the world for what it really is. Um, yeah, like I talked about how there's certain disciplines where I got kind of bored of them. Like I have to do the cold shower, I have to do the meditation. So I kind of eased up on those. One discipline I didn't ease up on was my phone discipline because I feel like it's not hard for me anymore.
Mm.
I feel like I don't even desire to touch my phone anymore.
Mm.
And it's not easy. Obviously, it's been like 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no, I'm proud to say that I don't have any addiction to my phone anymore. I think my screen time is like 25 minutes.
Wow.
Sure, we can talk about that. But I think we can get into that stuff. But the one piece I really like that you mentioned is this feeling of weakness,
Mm.
which is so real because people feel that. People feel they need that. But once you go through, then you realize that everyone around you is the weak one and then you're the only strong one left because they're all stuck in this world.
Mm.
And in terms of FOMO, it's all delusional. It's like it's not you don't actually miss out on much. And in fact, I'd say my social connections improved when I deleted it
Mm.
because it cuts. Oh, I think your computer's about to die.
Oh, do you have a charger?
I do, but I think it's charging the camera, but it should be fine. What did I say?
Um, how how like you're not the weak one.
Oh
Like the
yeah,
person
yeah,
without
yeah.
the phone is the weak one.
It's
Yeah.
it's a feeling that's weird that
Mm.
everyone is still stuck on this and because I think that yeah, social connections. I think I was talking. Yeah, social connections they improve once you delete it because you realize that your definition of what social is changes. Because I
Mm.
think we're so used to saying that, oh, having connections through Snapchat and Instagram is normal, right? It's the norm, it's how we do things. But it hasn't always been that way, has it? It's very recent. The last 10 years is when it became the norm. What
Yeah.
did people do 100 years ago? They prioritize friendships in person. And every time you encountered a friend in person, it's like it feels so much better because you literally have not seen them in so long because you haven't been seeing their face on Instagram and Snapchat. Yeah, man, I think that that's what I'm strong about. That it's kind of sad that it's such a problem, but I really hope that we can make progress toward that and people can start to realize that more.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's more impressive than cutting out sugar, honestly, because it goes back to like biology kind of how especially people our age, we need like social validation and we need the notifications on our screens. And it is built to trap people like us because it's wired into our brains. Um, and personally, when I'm like phone free, I feel so much more productive. I enjoy life more. Like simple experiences give me so much more happiness when I'm not on my phone because it is like a drug. it goes back to like to dopamine. And the fact of the matter is that you don't need to take like a chemical to release dopamine. Like me talking to you right now, if you say something funny, it'll release dopamine in my brain. And like these software, Instagram, Snapchat, these companies, they know this. And so your phone constantly gives you like validation and funny things and things that'll release dopamine in your brain. So it's basically acting like a drug. It's messing with your brain in that way. Yeah.
I think when we talk about modern technologies, it's really easy to paint how negative they are and how bad they are and paint an idealized world of like hunter-gatherers, right? Like, oh, phones are bad, get rid of them, have a 0 minute screen time. Oh, computers are bad for you. Oh, sitting down is bad for you. And we can list off all these problems with the modern day, but you can't really do anything with that because it's not exactly easy to live in the modern day without actually engaging with and using these things. And while there's a long laundry list of like negatives you can make, there's also positives that are there. So I think that to like the reframe like the next part of our conversation. I don't think we necessarily have to paint all the negatives behind it, but we can start to list like some of the negatives and see why they are and how to fix them, right? Because even if someone watching this goes down from 4 hours to 2 hours, or someone watching this keeps Snapchat, Instagram, deletes TikTok, these are all like huge positives because they're all doing different things to you. And I think there's ways to make progress here that is not necessarily correlated with screen time because I actually never cared about screen time. It just so happened that every time I learned about something like Instagram is bad for you, TikTok is bad for you, it just happened to be that screen time went down with it. But I think that there are different benefits you derive from lowering screen time in links Instagram and Snapchat. So I think the first one is the one you talk about, which is related to your dopamine system, right? And then the second one is like your relationships, and then there's other one which is like there's so many benefits, right? But we can talk about one at a time and see like how do you actually like you don't need to have a 0 minute screen time to achieve that goal, right? It's like for example, if your problem is dopamine, if your problem is that okay, you feel like you enjoy life more when you're not on it. Well, why is that? Because it's not like your phone obviously is a very high dopamine thing, but there are certain things on the phone that it's like it's so much more emphasized. Like for example, TikTok. If you have TikTok, deleting TikTok will change your life. Or Instagram Shorts. Or do you ever like go on like Instagram to Shorts and like TikTok and stuff?
Yeah, I think that's where all the dopamine's from. Like it's worse than video games. When I have Instagram on my phone, like I don't even want to play video games because I could just look at like Instagram Reels. I never downloaded TikTok, but like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, whatever else there is, like that's the exact same thing. Like short little clips. That's what makes us the most happy. Yeah.
I think that you don't need 25 minutes screen time to be happy. I think you can have a 2.5 hour screen time, a 3 hour screen time, and be happy as long as you don't have Instagram Shorts. So I'm not saying YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, or TikTok. I think the biggest problem in the modern day are those three apps, and just the way they're designed, bro. Like they're designed to like destroy your attention span. There's like so many units of dopamine packed in a short video, and it's so addicting and so soul crushing. So joy stealing. I can make all these negative words to describe it, but yeah, bro. I think that everyone should make a goal to get rid of those, and I don't think it's easy because you'll probably have some desire throughout the day, right, to go on Instagram Reels. But you can have a 3 hour screen time and be totally happy. You can be texting your friends on Snapchat and be happy as long as you don't have those three apps. I think those three apps are. You can even have Instagram, but don't go on Reels, right? I think Reels, Shorts, and TikTok it's like a severe problem with those three things. And I think the piece you mentioned that you feel so much happier when you're not on it, right? You feel like you're more present or you feel like little things make you more happy. You can have Instagram and still feel that way if you don't go on Reels, in my opinion. I think that's been the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem is the fact that like Instagram, it's a messaging app and also like the Reels thing, right? Like I'm not even talking about like validation from like notifications and stuff. Like that's nothing compared to the amount of dopamine that's released from scrolling through Instagram Reels. And I think it's such a problem that like the good things about social media, which is connection with friends is on the same exact app that provides like reels and stuff like that. Like at least I've noticed that a lot of my friends they message each other through Instagram now instead of iMessages because iMessages doesn't have reels, right? So everybody likes to be on Instagram all the time and send each other reels. And I think it's just so hard to get rid of Instagram now for that reason because you're losing out on like some of your social connections that way.
So you mentioned that you delete Instagram whenever you're able to, when you have like some other project to work on or thesis. Do you find that easy to do? Because I know that it's not easy to delete these apps, right? And it takes a lot of willpower and discipline to be able to, even for a period of time. Now, obviously, you know that you're gonna probably have it back when you're done with it, so maybe that helps you get through it. But how do you think you've been able to go through those zones of deleting it and not like you're in the middle of the thesis writing zone and you kind of want to re-download it or something? How do you overcome those times?
I think this is where I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I'm going to say like that like impulse of motivation is really useful for circumstances like this. Like that impulse, that sudden like 3 a.m. realization that like I'm wasting my time on Instagram that hits me and then I delete the app. And once the app is deleted, like it's it's so much easier for me to not re-download it than like say if I just close out of Instagram, like okay, no more Instagram for the day, but I still have the app, and then it's so easy for me to just like click it and like go on Reels again. So like the impulse that drives me to delete the app and like create these barriers that prevent me from using the app, like making it harder for me to re-download the app is what extends the length of time that I keep Instagram deleted. Like there was this one point where like I would set screen time using like this feature on your phone. You could like set screen times. Like it's usually parents do that for you. But like I did that to myself on all my games and on Instagram and on Snapchat and all that. I set my own screen time. And that barrier where like I had to put in my password to get like 15 more minutes, that barrier gave me enough time to like reflect and think like what am I doing with my life? You know? So I think setting up barriers for yourself is really what helps you overcome addiction. And in the case of senior thesis, it's because or like college writing and stuff like that, it's because once I delete it, I know now I have other stuff to do and I'm distracting myself with my like college writing or senior thesis writing and I don't have time to like re-download it. And in like much the same way, if I wanted to delete Instagram right now, then I'd try to occupy myself with something else. I think any addiction, if you try to occupy your time with like working out or talking to other people or like, I don't know, anything, if you occupy yourself, you're not gonna download it again. Like set barriers for yourself to overcome your addiction.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense because when you're going on Instagram to scroll, it's not like you're making a conscious decision that, okay, I'm going to sit down for the next hour and scroll. It's an impulse, right? It's something you don't have control over and not something you don't realize until after. So by instituting these barriers, you're giving yourself a minute to step back and be like, oh, wait, what am I actually doing, right? You can step away from the impulsive side of yourself and step into the more intelligent, more deeper wisdom part of yourself. And that way you can make better decisions. 'Cause it's not like most people watching these kind of podcasts have the intelligence enough to know that what constitutes a good life, right? People who know that discipline is important and consistency is important. So it's not like they're telling themselves, oh, wait, no, I think that the best thing for me right now is to scroll on Instagram for the next hour. They don't consciously make that decision. They realize after it what just happened to me because they were ruled by the impulse that wasn't actually them. So yeah, the barrier idea is really interesting. And I think that there's a lot of people who are starting out who really, really want to do it. I think for them, like these kind of tools are the most useful, right? Like periodization. I like periodization. I use it with a different like for with music, listening to music. I think that that's been another dilemma for me because I when I don't listen to music, I feel great. When I listen to music, I feel great, but like in different ways, right? Like music pumps me up, it makes you it increases my testosterone, it feels good. But also when I go like 4 or 5 weeks without listening to music, I feel more peaceful. I feel more happy with life. So it's like, what do I do with that? Well, I created like a schedule. Like I created like a periodized schedule where it's like, okay, these 3 weeks you can't listen, the next 3 weeks you can listen. I know that sounds kind of OD as fuck, but it worked.
Wow.
Like it actually worked because it's like I could be sitting here and I'm like, oh, I'm not allowed to listen to music till February 3rd. So the last time I listened was I had a week. in my schedule in December when I was like traveling and I had a great
Mm,
time listening to music. And then I wasn't gonna listen from all of January until I had February 13th marked on my calendar. I just chose a random
mm,
date, right? And it's like, okay, I've really had moments where I desired to listen to music between December and February, but it's like, oh, I know it's coming. I know the day I can listen is coming. So I can
mm,
enjoy the peace and quiet. And I can also enjoy listening to music. I don't feel guilty at the time because I know it's on the schedule.
mm.
And I think periodization is useful. And
Yeah.
you seem like you really like that idea. So you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the periodization thing, but I'm like also really excited about what you said about music because like something that I found is that music really is kind of like social media and video games in a way. Like it does the same exact things, but people don't see music as a problem because you can listen to music and do other things at the same time. And I think it's an example of like using your dopamine pathway like for your benefit. Like if you listen to music while you work out, as you said, it pumps you up, it gets you going. It releases more dopamine than like a workout without music. And then next time you're gonna want to work out again because like you think that it was like really fun because you had all this dopamine in your brain, like shooting around. Yeah. So I just thought that was like really interesting. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, you seem like you're really big on the dopamine stuff. I mean, it's true. I don't think that when we say music is bad, we should start saying, oh, all dopamine is bad. Like obviously, like the forms of dopamine we use are not natural. Like you can listen to that type of music 100, 200 years ago, right? But I think it's still okay. I think that's where we start to lean into the we're overthinking it too much side. Now, obviously, like me personally, I feel good when I go periods of time without listening, so I'll still like incorporate that. But yeah, going back to the help quitting these kind of habits, I think periodization is it's been useful. So earlier today, we were talking about some of your interests with philosophy, and we are talking about the concept of absurdism, and there's all these things that we were discussing. How about you get started and talk to us anything that you'd want to talk about with philosophy?
Oh yeah, so for my senior thesis, I was writing about a book called The Stranger by Albert Camus. And basically the book is about absurdism, which is this philosophy that says the world has no inherent meaning. And it explores the story of this guy who, he doesn't cry at his mom's funeral and he shoots a guy for no reason. And then in jail, he kind of just like accepts his execution because he thinks there's no meaning in his life. And so my essay was about that topic. Um, and more specifically, I was writing about like ethics. How do we use absurdism in ethics? And my paper was talking about how absurdism justifies like the use of animal experimentation and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my thesis. We can get into that if you want. But like moreover, I guess let's talk about philosophy. Like what do we believe? And personally, I don't really like believe absurdism. I feel like there is meaning in the world. I feel like we're all here for a purpose. I think that's just something that like I feel in my heart, but I don't have any justification for it, which is actually a problem that Camus had with a lot of people is that he says there's three choices. If you realize that the world is meaningless, like you have three choices. You could either like turn to religion, which is kind of what I'm saying right now, which is like I feel like there's a purpose. That's like turning towards blind faith. He had a problem with that. There's you can commit suicide, which is not good. Or you can just accept the meaninglessness of the world and continue living anyway, which is the idea of absurdism. So yeah, like what are your views on it?
Real quick, I forgot to tell you your phone's about to die.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
How much is
It's
it?
at 20%. I just don't want to dive in the middle, so I think I don't even know if I'm charging. You have one?
Oh, upstairs.
Okay, let's just roll with this for now,
Yeah.
and if we'll see
Can
how,
dive
if
in
we're gonna go longer, then I'll look at the
I
charger.
think you should.
Yeah. I agree with the part that we all have a purpose. And we can get more into why you believe that. I know you mentioned that it's more of a feeling. Um, I've thought about this idea of purpose a lot recently. I think that I've read a lot of books and watched content that have talked about this idea of purpose.
Mm.
And a book I read very recently called Mastery by Robert Greene. Have you heard of it?
No.
I think you'll really like it a lot.
Mm.
But their entire, so basically the book's whole premise is trying to figure out how does one master a skill, right? And as you, someone who loves to be consistent and disciplined, like, yeah, it's a pretty cool book. But it really shows how there's no shortcuts, and it analyzes all the masters of history, whether it be Albert Einstein with math or Leonardo da Vinci with art or the Wright brothers with engineering. And he goes on and he has like 50 people in the book who has analyzed their life story, and he finds patterns in all of their lives.
Mm.
And the first piece that relates to what we were talking about before was that there's no secrets to success. Everyone only got there for discipline and hard work.
Yeah.
But the second piece of it relates to what we're talking about right now, that there is a greater meaning to our life.
Mm.
So he describes something very unique in all of the masters of history. They all were able to access some form of primal sense of wonder or awe in the world. So as children, children are curious. Children are trying to explore. Children have these weird primal urges and inclinations to things, right? There might be some particular game that they're like, so fond of, or some thing that they hear that they're just like so interested by, or some phenomenon in the world that they just can't keep thinking about, can't stop thinking about. And obviously, it's not like very clear that, oh, I'm very interested in this one thing, this is my thing. But there are these weird inclinations and primal instincts in our being when we're children that are very unique to us as people because each of us is very different. Each person is very different. It goes on the genetic level that your genetics have never appeared before in humankind, but also the fact that you grew up to two very unique parents in a very unique environment, in a very unique place that have all molded you into becoming you.
Mm.
So we're all so unique as individuals, yet we're all put on the same path of success.
Mm.
We're put into this world with information overload where people are constantly telling us this is how you to live your life, this is how you're supposed to live your life, you're supposed to follow the train tracks to success. I think the communities that we're part of, it's all about go to a good high school, um, work really hard in high school, get a good grades, get into a good university, get a degree, get a job. Like that's the life, the train tracks that are set out for us, right? So we might have these childlike instincts, you might have these primal desires, but we start to lose them with time and we start to forget that they exist. We kind of fall back into a zone that we're just like everyone else, and then we follow the train tracks to success. But the unique thing, and this has always been the case with history, like for our modern day example, it's the train tracks to success to getting a degree and a job.
Mm.
But there's always been train tracks to success, which is why there are so few masters of history.
Mm.
Because the masters of history are the unique people who their primal desires connected with their where they end up going in life. Let me
Mm.
give you an example. The Wright brothers, the people who made the airplanes, right?
Yeah.
When they were when they were growing up, they had a very strange inclination toward like toys,
Mm.
right? So their parents would buy them a toy car for Christmas. They would literally take the whole car apart and then rebuild it. And it's like insane. And it's like, how are they able to do that? But it's there's something so primal about it that it was like there some life force guiding them that they enjoy doing this thing.
Mm. Like that.
Leonardo, yeah,
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci. He came from like a I don't know exactly what background he came from, but at least for the class of people that he was part of, they were papers weren't readily available, right?
Mm.
Arts and crafts, like if you go to like an art school, you probably have access to arts and crafts, but otherwise, a normal person is not doing art. But he would steal. He was 5 years old. He would steal papers from his father's office when he wasn't looking. He would take them. He'd find some pencil lying around his house. He would go in the woods and like go look at waterfalls and plants. And there was something about them that like was so primarily interesting to him, and he would just draw them. He would sit there and draw them, and that ended up being his life's task. I think that we all have some form of activity that can put us in a flow state, and that flow state basically means that it makes us forget about the world. We're so immersed in that activity that nothing else matters.
Mm.
And if you can find that flow state activity for you, then you'll go on to be successful because then you'll be able to work long hours on that activity without for other people it's work for you it's like play, like you enjoy doing it. But I do believe that since we're so unique as individuals, we're inclined to different things, and we can really dig back to our childhood before we were hit with information overload to see like what do we enjoy doing? What is the unique peculiarities about ourselves? Because we're all so peculiar in ways, but we try to stifle it because we want to regress to the mean and be normal. And I think reading the book, I went digging a little bit in my own childhood and I found things that were unique about me that if I look back, it's like no other kid would have done that, right? Like I was so obsessed with making systems and it was always something a part of me, right? That I like to create systems that simplify life. I like to use like charts and math and stuff to create these systems. I created like these different like games and businesses and I'd have like all the kids like they'd follow my rules and I'd create the rules of the game and I would I can't even describe it. It was so complex that I don't know what I was making. But I always had this desire to make systems, and I was obsessed with like making videos as well. I mean, that kind of ties into this piece. But
Yeah.
obviously, I don't exactly know everything. But I do believe that there is something unique about each individual, and if they can learn to become more self-aware of that, then they can find more meaning and fulfillment in their life. I feel like that was kind of confusing, but hopefully it kind of makes sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think that's something that I've noticed in people as well, is that like everybody has like a talent or something that they should cultivate and that's something that they should pursue. And that um sometimes their parents are trying to force them to do something else that they might not like want to do. I think I'm lucky enough where I think my interests in nutrition or biology and stuff is something that my parents are like that's what they want me to do anyway. So I'm pretty lucky in that sense, but not everybody is as lucky and sometimes they're kind of forced by society to do things that maybe they're not good at or things that they don't want to do. Um, but to bring it back to philosophy and absurdism, the fact that we can see so much purpose in people and everyday things like that, uh, like that fact is kind of why absurdism was so troubling to me, is so troubling to me. It's that like even though we see purpose in people and like what they do, absurdism says like so what, you know? Like in a million years, who's gonna remember the fact that like the Wright brothers made an airplane? Like a million years, nobody's gonna remember. Honestly, like maybe humans aren't even around in a million years. Like who's gonna remember? And if we are somehow alive in a million years, like one day we won't be. And if that's the case, like if it's inevitable that everything will end, then like why is there like such purpose in our lives that we see? That's so troubling to me. And yeah, I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
I want to go to the religion piece of it. The question whether is there more to what we see with our own eyes. And I think there is. And the way I've thought about it recently is that it helped me to understand the idea of layers of things when I think about the levels of things, right? Like I like to think about how there's ants that are so tiny and crawling, and there's like germs and bacteria that are so small and so tiny that we can't even see with our own eyes. But I want you to imagine like an ant, or let's even think of a bacteria, right? Let's say there's a bacteria that's living in your stomach, right? And it's a super bacteria that has a brain. And it's just really intelligent. It's a really intelligent bacteria crawling around in your stomach,
Yeah.
right? And the intelligent bacteria can collaborate with other intelligent bacteria and they figure out, yo, guys, guess what? We're living in something called a stomach, all right? And the stomach has these properties and this is how the stomach works. But guess what? There's something more in the stomach, right? Like we're all living in the stomach. We think that's all there is to this world. But if you expand it, there's actually something called a human body. And there's other body parts. And there's other types of bacteria. And they think they're so intelligent because they figured everything out. They can see the whole human body. Let's say that's the limit to what they've discovered. How would you explain the concept of this earth to a bacteria that feels it's so intelligent because it's discovered the human body? And then how would you explain the concept of the entire universe to a bacteria? It can't even perceive that as a concept. And I think as we can look at ourselves in the same way.
Yeah.
We humans are intelligent humans. We figured out, oh, guys, we're actually living on this thing called the Earth. And we're even so smart that we figured out that, oh, there's stars that exist. And we've seen that, oh, there's a whole universe exists. And we think we figured it out. I think that's a layer to something that's even bigger. And this, it's just that we can't comprehend it. And I think there is some greater power and that there's some way that everything kind of aligns. 'Cause I think it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. But yeah, I think thinking about the layers to things, it really gives you perspective, right? That how would you explain the concept of the sun to a bacteria living in your stomach? You couldn't. So there's something that we are not capable of understanding.
I agree with you, but like, does the existence of like more layers necessarily give like meaning to our lives or to the lives of the bacteria? Like, is the bacteria's life somehow meaningful just because there's like a greater world out there? Just because um like there's more types of bacteria, the fact that it's in a stomach in a human, in this planet, in the universe, is that does the fact that there is more layers give meaning to the life of the bacteria or to our own lives?
It's a good question. And the reason I would say so is because I think the enemy of the meaning of life is science, in my opinion. Because for most of history, humans thought that everything that there is to be figured out has already been figured out. Most of human society was cultivated from religion, right? Religious beliefs, religion united people, the church, we all follow the church's rules. And because of that, human progress was stagnant, right? Because people thought that if people had questions about life, they'd go to the Bible, right? That all their answers are in the Bible. Yeah. We already have figured everything out that there needs to be figured out. Yeah. But the biggest change in like the 18th century, the 19th century is that for the first time, humans admitted their ignorance. They actually told themselves, wait, everything that there is in this world hasn't been figured out. If we accept the fact that we don't know anything and we ask questions and we learn, then we can progress. And it worked. Science is all about asking questions and admitting that you don't know it and then going into an experiment and figuring it out, right? And I think because of that, there's always been this notion in me knowing that, oh yeah, well, we know about life and death, and we know that um the reason we act the way we do is because of some biological impulses. It's not because you have some soul inside of you. It's because of the dopamine transmitters in your brain, right? Yeah. It's like, oh wait, that's the sun. Like it's not because the some God created the sun. It's because helium came together. And I think when you think about science and you think that, oh, we figured it out, this whole notion of we figured it out kills the meaning of life because then we feel as if, oh wait, we if humans are so smart that they figured everything out, then there's probably nothing more to it. But anything that shows that humans may not know everything, anything that shows that wait, there actually might be more to this than we don't know, it provides like a glimmer of hope because maybe there is something greater that we don't understand, right? That oh sure, the sun was created by helium and not God, but there might be something still that we can't see, and maybe that gives meaning because maybe that increases the chance that this wasn't like a big coincidence and that there's something that we don't understand. And sometimes just knowing the fact that we don't understand is peace giving itself because we can kind of put our faith, or as you said, the first example of blind faith into something that's bigger. So knowing that there's more reinforces the blind faith in a more calming way, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's partly why like everybody isn't going through like an existential crisis or something, is that like the fact that they think there's more to be discovered about the world. Like that glimmer of hope, as you said, is what like keeps people going. Like maybe one day we'll know why we're here. Um, but back to absurdism, like even if the world was like created by like a deity or a god or something, and even if there is like an afterlife after this that we haven't discovered, but it's there, like absurdism is basically saying like there's still like there's no meaning in that. Like why? Why like if God exists, like who created God? Like why is God there? Like God probably has to ask the same questions that we have to ask, which is um like why am I here? You know? I don't know. It's kind of hard to put into words, but um I think the reason why it's such a hard question is because nobody has answered it. Nobody has an answer to it. Yeah.
I think that's why people tend to stay away from it because it's so uncertain that the asking the questions leads to more confusion. But yeah, man, I think let's close it at that. It's a good way to end off this podcast. I've had a lot of fun today, man. Glad you decided to come through.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really fun to talk about everything, and I really liked especially your social media quitting thing. I didn't realize you've like stayed away from it for that long and so successfully. I think that's really impressive. So I'm glad to hear about it.
Yeah, man, I'm also really proud of the things you've done. Like it's always great to hear someone who's trying to make change in their life and trying to improve their sleep and trying to eat less unhealthy.
Mhm.
It always makes me happy to see that there's people like that that are trying to and they've seen so much progress with it. Like I never knew about how disciplined you were before, and you learn so many things about people and increase your respect for them, and gives you hope for the world.
Mhm.
So thank you for coming down, bro.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that episode with Ryan Liu, then you're going to enjoy this episode right here with Brock Shovel, where we talk about the importance of discipline in living a better life. Make sure you hit that link right now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.